Oh, you're here. Good. I was hoping for company. You see, I've got stories, dark ones, chilling ones, the kind that keep you up at night. Mythical creatures, curses, horrors you can't escape. Shall we begin? Don't worry, I won't bite. Much.
Lynn was an ordinary office worker. Her life wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful alongside her husband, David. However, ever since a landslide accident a year ago, her life had taken a sinister turn. During the accident, Lynn and David were walking along a narrow mountain path when a low rumble echoed from above. Moments later, a massive boulder came crashing down, kicking up a cloud of dust. Lynn heard David yell, "Watch out!" before a violent impact knocked her off her feet. She barely had time to see the swirling gray dust before everything went black. Lynn felt unbearable pain coursing through her body as her vision blurred and her ears filled with the sound of her ragged breathing and distant rumbling. Just before losing consciousness, she vaguely felt David's hand grabbing hers, desperately trying to pull her to safety. When she woke again, days had passed. She lay in a hospital bed, weak and pale. The doctor informed her that she had been in a coma for several days due to severe injuries and would need a long period of rest. Staring at her pallid skin, she felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. David took care of her attentively, but whenever she asked about the details of the accident, he would remain silent, merely urging her repeatedly to avoid sunlight as much as possible. His strange concern left Lynn puzzled, but she couldn't bring herself to question him further. Though she found David's warnings odd, she followed his instructions. She stayed indoors during the day and always wore hats and gloves when venturing out. Yet unease grew within her, especially as David's behavior became increasingly strange. One day, she noticed David frequently leaving late at night, returning home with a hurried expression. Once, he accidentally left his phone on the couch, and Lynn couldn't resist picking it up. She found a location marked on his GPS, an address deep in a forest. As she thought back to his recent evasive answers and the faint noises she had heard coming from the trunk of his car at night, curiosity and unease finally got the better of her. She jotted down the address and decided to investigate. The following evening, dressed in the long clothes David had prepared for her, she took a night bus to the edge of a dense forest. The area was eerily quiet, with even the rustling of leaves sounding unnaturally loud. Her heart pounded, but she steeled herself, confirmed the location on her phone, and ventured into the woods. Deeper into the forest, she stumbled upon a scene she would never forget. Pale moonlight filtered through the branches, casting a ghostly glow over a clearing. There, David stood, binding a terrified, pale-faced man with thick ropes. Scattered around them were strange objects, dark red candles flickering with low flames, the acrid smell of iron mixed with the pungent aroma of burning herbs hanging heavy in the air. In David's hand was a sharp wooden stake, its tip glistening with what appeared to be blood. He stood motionless, muttering in a low guttural tone that sounded as if it came from the depths of the earth. Lynn's mind reeled, and a wave of nausea surged through her. Trembling, she stepped backward, accidentally snapping a twig underfoot. The sharp sound cut through the air like a knife. David's head shot up, his eyes gleaming like a predator's. "Lynn, what are you doing here?" he asked coldly, his voice devoid of any warmth. Lynn stammered, unable to form coherent words as tears streamed down her face. But David's expression twisted into a grotesque smile. He walked toward her slowly, the bloodied stake dripping ominously. "You've seen everything now," he said, his voice low and icy. "There's no turning back." Lynn wanted to run, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. She could only watch in horror as David advanced. Then, from the depths of the forest, a guttural growl echoed, growing louder with every passing second. From the shadows, several figures emerged. Their movements were stiff, their skin an unhealthy gray-green hue. Lynn's breath hitched as she recognized two of them, her long-deceased parents. What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. David's smile widened, now completely unhinged. His eyes gleamed with twisted delight as he gestured toward the figures. "This is my masterpiece. I brought them back for you. I knew how much you missed your parents. They're not just here to protect you. They're the key to breaking this cursed land. But they need more strength, more blood, more souls." Lynn's mind spiraled into chaos. Her parents shuffled toward her, their faces frozen in eerie, hollow smiles. They moved with an unnatural lethargy, yet each step radiated a terrifying inevitability, like the forest itself was propelling them closer. Panic surged through her veins, but no sound escaped her lips. The scene before her felt like a portal to hell, swallowing her last shred of hope. "Lynn, you're one of us now." Her mother's voice rasped, empty and chilling, echoing with an unnatural resonance. Summoning every ounce of courage, Lynn turned and fled deeper into the forest. The dim moonlight barely pierced the canopy, leaving the ground littered with roots and branches that snagged her feet. Each step echoed loudly, betraying her location. Her legs felt heavy and unresponsive, each step a struggle against an invisible weight, while her chest burned as if her lungs were clawing for air. Behind her, footsteps closed in, accompanied by guttural growls and distorted laughter. The sharp, metallic tang of decay clawed at her throat, forcing her to swallow down the urge to retch. Lynn suppressed a scream, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Suddenly, she tripped over a root and fell hard onto the damp ground. The wet earth pressed against her cheek, cold and clammy. She scrambled to her feet, only to see David standing a short distance away, the bloodied stake still in his hand, his eyes glinting with merciless intent. "You can't escape, Lynn," he said, his voice calm but menacing. "You're meant to be part of the sacrifice. It's the only way our family can be whole." Lynn shook her head in despair, her fingers clawing at the moist soil. The earth's gritty texture clung to her skin, and the acrid smell made her gag. Her arms trembled as she pushed herself up, her knees scraped and throbbing. But when she looked up, David was already looming over her, the stake raised high. In a final, desperate act, Lynn grabbed a sharp stone from the ground and drove it into David's chest with all her strength. His body froze, then crumpled to the ground. Gasping for breath, Lynn stared at David's body, but to her horror, it began to change. His skin turned pale and cracked, glowing faintly with eerie green veins that pulsed like living things. The ground beneath him rippled as a piercing wail erupted from his chest, filling the air with an unbearable cacophony. Lynn clutched her head, the sound burrowing into her mind. David's eyes flew open, revealing endless black abysses that devoured every flicker of light, casting shifting shadows around him. The forest trembled as leaves and debris swirled toward him, His body erupted into a blinding column of light, shooting skyward before vanishing completely. Silence fell, but the echoes of the wail lingered in Lynn's mind. She collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down her face as the oppressive darkness of the forest closed in. Whispers slithered around her like serpents, some hissing cruel taunts, others sobbing softly, their words cutting into her fragile sanity. She realized with chilling certainty that escape was impossible. Her parents stood motionless in the distance, their hollow smiles a grim reminder of her shattered hope. True freedom, she thought bitterly, might never come.